simply not always going to survive, but you can put whatever justification makes sense to you.
The overall's going to equal.
Yeah.
I don't know if Friday each other.
They do.
I mean, if it's in the wild, they're like predators and everything.
Equal share twins in the world.
Okay, then number 3 asks how many frog eggs were observed at the beginning of the study.
10,534 to be exact.
Okay. Now, mathematically, what does this mean? Yeah, very good. Is that spelled wrong? Yes.
We wrote this down already for them.
Wait, is that still spelled wrong? Is there 2 G's? Beginning?
B-E-G-I-N-N-I-N-G.
2 N's? I wrote that, and it looks so wrong.
There's 2 ends?
That looks so wrong to me.
It's begin, and then when you have that ing at the end, you would have to double up your, is it called a consonant? Yeah, you have to double up that consonant before the ing at the end.
Now, we said this represents mathematically, this is our y-intercept. At 0 months, there's this many frog eggs. So that's our y-intercept. Okay, then we're talking about increasing and decreasing intervals, which I briefly touched on when I pulled draw back together. We said what points were important in our increasing and decreasing intervals. Our maximum and minimum values. Did we find those? We found them?
We found a 0.
So it will be the 20 that it's at? Or is it
The point. You're going to write a point. Well, sorry. It's an interval. It's an interval.
yeah, but like, I don't know, like,
I see what you're saying. Yes. It will just be, we're going to talk about this. Be careful about open or closed brackets. So brackets or parentheses. Okay, so in increasing, what were those intervals? What were our increasing intervals? If you guys don't have a calculator, I would highly suggest using your calculator.
what time is it?
Do what?
One thing I might suggest to say about this, isn't the next question about the max and min, number 5? I might do that before I do that.
Okay, we'll do that.
Does that make
So let's come back here.
I would always do my max and min before intervals of decrease and increase.
Okay, so number 5, it asks you to find our maximum and minimum. So you'll actually need to get out a calculator.
Oh, does that make sense? Why?
If you guys don't remember the difference between absolute max or min or relative max to min, I would suggest reading this little excerpt.
We've never defined the difference before. Like they don't study that difference in Algebra 1.
Okay, so an absolute max, what do we just think that means based on the language?
It's the exact.
Absolute is for the whole graph.
For the whole graph. Yeah, that's a good informal way. You're looking at the whole graph, what is the highest point that you could find? What about absolute min?
The lowest
Right.
point.
What about relative?
It's around-ish,
You're
like-ish.
looking at a certain, certain window, what is the minimum or the maximum of that value? So knowing that, now use your graphic calculators to find these points. And then we'll go back and answer questions. Yeah. Do y'all remember how to find minimums and maximums
On the calculator.
on the calculator?
Not particularly.
Say that louder. Deja. Analyze graph. Then where do you think you're going to go? Maximum.
So, what do you guys analyze graph?
What do you think? What are you finding?
Just write it out as a standard number, not scientific notation.
What is this mean? Okay, so if it says 1.45 e to the plus 4,
Don't sweat that.
this means you're going to go positive 4 units over, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So my number will become 145, place both of these as 0, 0. Very, yeah. Okay. Does that make sense?
You can change the settings.
You just have so many things like.
You don't know how to answer.
Right, minimum? That's good.
See how it's-
Because you have a lot of, you got a lot going on right here. I was grabbing holds. So it's right here, you see, oh, that's just down to that to spin towards. So this will clear up some of the junk.
Here's yeah, here's the thing about it. If you were to look at increasing, what kind of slope would that have? It's not a line, but if you were to draw a line, what slope would that have?
I would do,
Increasing would be,
now that
but
I'm
notice
here, I would do
here, if
that.
I were to draw a line
And I
across,
don't know
wouldn't that be
exactly what
horizontal?
it is, but.
So the zero, max and min aren't actually increasing or decreasing at all. So we always use parentheses for that.
And then,
We always use parentheses for increase. So we know and range.
She always said,
Miss Estel is one nicer than I am. I'm gonna rip you all a new one tomorrow if we don't actually get to work trying to learn something. Is that clear? I'm going to rip you all a new one tomorrow if we don't actually get started on trying to learn something. Do you have any intention 3, 4, or 5? And y'all been talking multiple times, all of a sudden, that's probably pretty cool. And then we get frustrated when we struggle in my class. So that's the number one reason why. I only get that. If you were actually engaging in the whole class. We should be going to the class. Okay, but hit it again. Go to analyze graph.
what looks like a minimum to you? Okay,
So,
that one.
are you
just
looking for
so you know.
maximum or minimum right now?
Okay, so all you're doing is I'm.
So you gotta know the difference, because the calculator knows.
Go ahead, go to the left of it. And then somewhere just right in the middle.
Click on that point. Alright, now hit it.
Alright, I'm gonna call y'all for relative bins and points, so
If you go to the
y'all need to have these written down.
that has to go somewhere. So you got that? It's just here to the right of it. So when you tried to do that maximum earlier, you used minimum, which is why I'm getting this point over here. You have to make sure you use maximum. Otherwise, it won't. Now,
Oh, my bad,
if you
okay.
need to, you can grab for the, so you can really see it. And this is
Intervals of increasing and decreasing always use parentheses. Is that what the question was?
do you know how to change the settings so they can see the digits better? So it's no longer scientific notation.
I would play around with it, but I've done it before.
I'll just show it to them real quick. This is gonna help. Hey guys, really quickly, because this is gonna help y'all answering these questions. Please follow along with this. If you click on menu, right, go to settings. And when you go to settings, you'll see display digits. Click on that and change it to float 5. It's gonna make answering these questions way easier. Okay? Yes.
Do we have to fix the grid too? Yours is different.
I mean, I would do line grid if yours isn't already there, but it's your choice.
Mine's on no grid.
Yeah, I do line grid every time, but the main thing is change display digits to float 5. Okay, it'll make those numbers easier to see.
Alright guys, where did we discover a relative min at?
Do you want to go back to the slide or you want me to leave that?
Okay,
it's
up
fine.
there.
Our first minimum, our leftmost minimum, what was that point?
5.75 and
Okay, is this a relative minimum or an absolute minimum? Why is it relative?
because that was
Okay, yeah, for technically this window, this would be our lowest point, but if we're analyzing the whole graph, where would our absolute minimum be? This one, this is the lowest point on the graph. So there is a relative minimum at, what was that point again?
5.75.
Okay, now, a little interesting thing about, and I've actually heard, I didn't really mention this in first block, I've seen two different things. Some teachers, and you can tell them what you would prefer,
Okay.
some teachers will also call this a relative minimum. Yes, it is the absolute minimum as well, but it can be referred to as a relative minimum if you're just looking into this viewing window. What is your take on that?
I need them to tell me it's an absolute minimum, but they can also call, yeah, you can say it's an absolute and relative, like it's both. Because it is the lowest point for its little area, so it's a relative minimum, it just also happens to be an absolute minimum.
Okay, I'm just seeing both different, or both ways. So there is a relative minimum at that point, and then what was this point right here?
38. And then negative 2081. Yeah.
Okay, and we said that this was the absolute minimum, right? Oh, wait. Yeah. 2,807. Wait.
2,807 points.
Okay, and then there's an absolute min, and that was our absolute min, right?
Yeah.
What about our absolute maximum? What's our absolute maximum?
Oh, I got you. Is that how you describe what it is, or the actual?
Yeah, what is the absolute maximum in this situation? The highest point, okay, what's our highest point?
Well,
Infinity. Do we have an absolute maximum in this? Because can you have a point at infinity? Because if you had a point at infinity, it's infinity, so there's going to be something higher than that. So there's never a point. So there is no absolute maximum. But what about a relative maximum? What did you say, 14,000? Do we understand the difference between relative and absolute? So be careful with that.
Did you say there's no absolute maximum?
Yes, why?
Oh, never mind.
You got it?
Yeah, that's where y'all are, right? Yeah, let's go ahead and cut out, those already have it cut out.
Okay, so last thing that we're going to do, you're going to be cutting something that you're going to use tomorrow. If you will turn to page, I think it's 245.
You may be start.
Okay. 245 25, you'll see a whole bunch of like dotted lines. You should have scissors on your table. If you don't, there's scissors right here. Go ahead and cut those out. Who else needs a pair of scissors? Do not lose these sheets of paper.
Oh God, I'll sit there and everything get locked out of mine.
Oh, I didn't tell you? Oh, I didn't tell you? She said I can't get it. Oh, mom makes her my brother not. I had a phone on interview. Actually, only got it with my sister. Everybody be collecting on the I don't want to be a player. Oh, they don't play my granddad. I told y'all to come here because I ain't got no granddad. I don't. When I go, what? I mean, we're
Alright guys, don't forget to throw away your trash when you're done cutting. I'll walk around with the box of scissors. You can place the
Your daddy, grandpa. You
guys,
Okay, I'll
Aaliyah's bringing up a good point. If you want a paper clip to put all these together and put them into your book or notebook, there's paper clips right here.
Go ahead, give me one.
They're different colors.
Okay, are you gonna be here?
My guy.
Not today, today. I never.
What time or what?
Some dance.
When are you gonna put the plug up on their hands?
What kind of day?
Don't say like
You do that lace?
I don't formally do ballet, but I used to.
You were at ballet store.
Start with the ballet. You do ballet, Miss Beth? Not anymore, but I used
That's
to.
all for
Your feet hurt? Cause they be saying people be hurting their feet, cause y'all make y'all really big all the time. Okay, make sure you look at the board where y'all's closing. Put this on, you gotta take a picture.
Who's? These in this class?
I know I finished number one.
Come on, you should go ahead and
Amanda, we
teaching we'll talk.
I know, it was like.
No, you still so long. We had
Not about food.
Hey, Bree.
Video be
Can you
not
erase
about
that
food.
font? We had A class.
Hey guys, if we're getting done this early, can we at least put up the calculators, please?
Yes, sir.
Come on.
And you're not the teacher today.
I am, yeah. But I'm also gonna have the best look over and see if she agrees. Can you look over the
You cannot give out words.
Excuse me, Bree. You must be right outside your mind.
You know, just right outside the door.
No, inside. Close the door behind you until that bell rings.
Hey. I'm listening now. Hey, I'm 22. Somebody. That was funny. Bree, you need to be inside your mind.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. And you are now the teacher.
I am back to being a teacher. You are correct.
Where's the students? I've been